Hello, everybody. This is CaveNet NSS webinar series. I'm your host, Debbie Spoons, and tonight we have Bill Steele, a well-known caver throughout the NSS, and he is coming on for his second command performance to give us an awesome webinar. Bill is pretty humble. I see his bio. He doesn't write much there. He does have a very large and impressive bio. But I'll let him talk about that. I was looking at his bio going, wait a minute, Bill, I know you've done more than that. But anyway, Bill has been, he is the co-founder of PESH, which is an amazing group that takes trips down to Huautla. If you don't know where that is, I suggest you take a look at it, and tonight we'll talk more about it. But Bill did his first trip 38 years ago. In 1977, and he joined the NSS in '64 at age 16. Now, right now, he lives in Dallas, Texas. Texas cavers are great. He caves in Texas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Mexico, China. He's really all over the place, and he's got some amazing stories. I was able to twist his arm to get him to do another one. Bill could fill up our entire library with all of the things he's done. He's also a member of the NSS Awards Committee and an officer in the Dallas-Fort Worth Grotto. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Bill and let him take it right, because he has an amazing webinar for you. If you were not able to see the last webinar, all the webinars are recorded and stored on the NSS website, which is caves.org. On the first page, on the left side, you'll see a little picture of the last webinar. Click just below it. It takes you to the library. We have a huge library. We're going on almost 6 years, and Bill's first webinar will be on there. So anyway, Bill, I'm going to turn this over to you right now.
Thanks, Debbie, and thanks a lot for doing this for the NSS. Hello, everybody. Like Debbie said, I'm in Dallas County. I'm actually in Irving, Texas, next door to Dallas, but I live here and like it. And I'm going to talk tonight about our project in Sistema Huautla. Sistema Huautla is Spanish, of course. Sistema means system, so it's the Huautla cave system. Huautla is a city. You'll see a picture of it in a few minutes. And our project that we launched 5 years ago, a restart of caving in Huautla, is named Proyecto Espeleologico Sistema Huautla, which means the speleological project of Sistema Huautla. Huautla is in the state of Oaxaca. Oaxaca is there at the lower part of the screen. The abbreviation is OAX. I know people that have seen the spelling of Oaxaca and didn't have a clue how to spell it. I mean, how to pronounce it. It's OAXACA. And up in the northern part of the state of Oaxaca, close to where the states of Puebla and Veracruz come together with Oaxaca, is where the deepest caves in the Western Hemisphere are. There's several, but Huautla was the first one to become over 1,000 meters deep back in 1980. At that time, there were only 7 1,000-meter deep caves in the world, and now there's, I don't know, 106 or 107, something like that. First cavers to go there were from Austin, Texas, and they were students at University of Texas, and they got studious about figuring out where the ingredients were right for the perfect storm of super deep caves. And they came up with this mountain range in northern Oaxaca that had all the ingredients: very thick limestones, a lot of rainfall, and a deep canyon to the south where probably all that rainfall ran underground and came out again. When they arrived there in 1965, the road was new and in good shape because it had just been finished. But they found that not many outsiders had arrived there before. And it was an Indian town. Mazatec Indians lived there who had seen outsiders arrive before, and I'll say a little bit more about that later, who they were and why they were there. But not many outsiders had reached Huautla by the mid-60s. The following year, in 1966, they returned because they hadn't gotten out to the big features that they could see on topographic maps and aerial photographs. And mainly it was this big entrance. This is the the entrance to what's known as Sótano de San Agustín, the pit of San Agustín, and the village at the top of the deep sinkhole that leads to this 270-foot drop, or almost 100 meters, is named San Agustín Zaragoza. And you can see a path and a caver climbing a rope up that path. But of course, that wasn't there when the first cavers arrived, and they had to sort of blaze a trail down the wall of a deep pit. This is now one of 25 entrances known to Sistem Huautla. So through the years, since 1966, when that first entrance was found, there have been 30-some expeditions. I've been on 23 of them, and I didn't go on the first few. I was still in high school and then college. But I'll say more about the various eras of exploration here. But that's me in the lower right, standing on a path overlooking a road that was just paved about 20 years ago, right down through the heart of the karst drainage basin. Updated map here of Sistema Huautla. What you see is 53 miles of passages, or 85 kilometers. And what you can't see, of course, in a plan view is the relief. This is a very steep cave system. It's more than twice as deep as the deepest cave in the United States. It's the 10th deepest cave in the world, deepest cave in the Western Hemisphere. And from the passage it reaches the farthest north, purple at the top of the screen, to sump 9 in the lower left, that's got 5,117 feet of relief within the cave. So it's a big cave, it's very deep, and it's got all kinds of really interesting features to it. This is a profile view. You can see the scale on the left. That shows it's over 1,500 meters deep, 1,560 to be exact. And here's a different view. And what the scale is off to the right is the Empire State Building in New York City. So it's 4 of those on top of each other. And that dotted line across the top represents roughly the surface. Huautla is known for pits. There are about 600 pits that have been rigged within the karst drainage system or basin. They don't all connect to the system yet. We're working on that. But within the area that's drained by the karst, there are 600 pits in the various caves. That's a lot. It's also known for huge chambers. There are 12 huge chambers within the karst drainage basin, and about half of those are actually within Sistema Huautla. This is known as Anthodite Hall. What's most significant about this, besides its size, it's half again the size of a dome stadium, like Cowboy Stadium here in Dallas where I live, half again that big. And it's got 3,000 feet of rock above it to the surface. So it's very deep. You got to go 700 meters deep, or over 2,000 feet deep, and then climb up 100 meters to get into this incredible chamber. We have that same picture on a chronology poster that we made up a couple of years ago, planning on updating it for this next expedition in April of 2019. And there are the dates. I was mentioning 65 and 66 when the first cavers arrived there, but I'm going to use this to represent the various eras of the exploration. Those first 3 years is when Texans from Austin mainly went down and started caving there. And then 68 through 71, those 4 years, pretty much it was Canadians from Ontario. At Hamilton University, karst hydrologist, a professor there, Derek Ford, brought a bunch of students over from England, and they were very hardcore cavers, wetsuits, did a lot of deep caves, and they kind of took it from the Texans and went there through 1971. And then there was a hiatus between 71 and 76. The Canadians actually thought they'd finish the exploration of the cave, but there's a couple of question marks on their map. So my friends and I started going there in 1976, and we've gone ever since. Not every year, as you can see, but most years. Like I said before, we've had 23 expeditions since that first one in 76. And then in the lower right, you can see 2014 through 2016. That actually should be 2014 through 2018 this year, because that's PESH. That's the reorganization. That's Proyecto Espeleologico Sistema Huautla. So a British expedition went to Huautla in 2013. In fact, 4 of the people that went to the very bottom of the system and pushed the sump down there were on this recent rescue in Thailand. Jason Mallison, Chris Steele, Rick Stanton, and they added 81 meters of depth to Sistema Huautla and reestablished it as the deepest cave in the Western Hemisphere. Sistema Cheve had bumped it out of that position for a few years. The Huautla then became deepest again, and it still is. So Tommy Shiflett and I, who'd been caving there together since the 70s, we went on the British expedition, and we were the ones that provided them with all the information they needed to have their expedition. We went with them, and when we were in the airport in Oaxaca about to head home, waiting for our planes, we started talking about how much we loved going there. And yeah, we've gone other places all over Mexico, all over, to China, Guatemala, Belize, and so forth. But boy, that was where our hearts were. And if we didn't get after it and really reorganize and continue and be thorough about it, who would? So we sat there, and on a napkin in the airport, we jotted down some goals, and there they are, that we would have month-long expeditions in the month of April for 10 years. Well, we've done 5 of those. So we're halfway to that goal now, and it's been successful. And we plan to conduct full speleological studies, not just exploration and mapping, and of course cartography, which is making maps, but studies in geology and biology and paleontology, archaeology, if sites were found, anthropology, because the people there have beliefs in caves, and we like to document what those are and publish the findings. There's a rich body of publications about caving in Huautla, probably 200 titles, 2 books. Bill Stone wrote one, I wrote one, and we've had a chapter in the Encyclopedia of Caves, and there will be at least 2 more books at the end of the project. And we do gear development and testing. We also support Mexican cave scientists, and that's worked out great. We've had Mexican graduate students in biology and paleontology and archaeology join us, and they write papers, and we support them by not charging them any fee and giving them room and board and getting them in and out of the caves. We've also enjoyed some of the best cave photographers, not only from the United States, but from Australia, from England, from Canada, join us, and we're putting together a body of incredible photographs, many of which you're going to see right now. We started this project with the system being 65 kilometers long, or 40 miles, and we set a goal, just an arbitrary goal, to extend it to 100 kilometers, or 62 miles, and now it's 85. So we've added 20 kilometers, or 13 miles of passages in 5 expeditions, and extend the depth from the 1,554 meters that it was 5 years ago to an even mile, 5,280 feet. We've actually added 6 meters in depth, and that was by taking more precise GPS readings of the various entrances and sort of tightening up the cave map and making it more accurate, and actually added a little bit more depth that way. Cavers that have caved in Huautla since the beginning, since the 60s, have come from all these countries, and the asterisks indicate the countries that were represented on this year's expedition, 2018. We had 39 participants from 6 countries, and it's just great to have the diversity of various nations represented, and hardcore cavers from other countries join us. And of course, Mexico. We had several of the best cavers in Mexico with us this year, and will be again next year, and do come most years. We start out an expedition by having a send-off party. There's me holding up the flag of the Explorers Club. The guy to my left is holding, it's backwards, but you can see that's the flag of the NSS. And then draped over the railing of the deck is the flag of Mexico. And this was in Austin, Texas. The deck at my daughter's house, behind her house, we had probably close to 100 people there. It was a potluck dinner, and there's a thriving caving community, caver community in in Austin, so it's a good place to launch our expeditions. That was on March 31st of this year. The next morning, Easter Sunday, we faced the challenge of getting it all into two vehicles. That Dodge Ram on the left and a van that the project owns to the right that you can't see. But we got it all in there and we headed south and drove on into Mexico. 3-day drive from Austin to Huautla. If you've ever been to Monterrey and Nuevo Leon in Mexico, you'll recognize that mountain range, that big city at the base of it. And in the rearview mirror, you can see Blake Harrison's Dodge truck following the van. One thing you gotta realize when you're managing a project like this and you need to make decisions on the spot is that you got to do that. You got to make a decision. And we got to the town or the city of Tehuacan, Puebla. We had half a day really of driving to go to get to Huautla, and Blake Harrison told me it seemed like his clutch was going out. So he asked me the question. He said, "What do you think I ought to do? Drive on up in the mountains and hope all goes well, or should we get it fixed here in Tehuacan?" Well, that seemed like an obvious thing to decide to me. I said, "No, let's get it fixed here, where we know it can get fixed pretty quickly." And in fact, those mechanics at this shop, very well equipped shop in Tehuacan, Puebla, stayed until about 10:30 at night, got the clutch replaced, and then they bought the beer, which indicates what it's like in Mexico very often, about the most friendly people you'll ever meet. Finally, we arrived in the city of Huautla. Now, in the 42 years that I've been going there, since I guess 41 years since my first trip in 1977, boy, has it ever grown. It's grown probably times 4, and it's got a paved road to it and many, many vehicles, even taxi cabs over the last 2 years. The Huautla's modern. They got 4G in the city. They got wireless Wi-Fi and hotels and restaurants. And we rent houses in a village behind the ridge on the upper right. Huautla's about 25, 30-minute drive from where we stay, but we go on over and set up shop in the town of Plan Carlota in a quiet, beautiful little valley, very friendly people, and close to 2 entrances to Sistem Huautla, which are in fact the entrances that we've been working over the last few years. Ever since we started PESH, we've been going in the La Grieta entrance every expedition. We rent most of the buildings that you see here in the picture, a cluster of them. We set up a cookhouse, a community kitchen, and we're equipped to feed about 25 people at a time. Fully equipped kitchen. We put banners of sponsors up on the walls, and you can see the flag of Mexico back there. We rent a dormitory type house across the street, and you can see how posh the accommodations are. What you get is a concrete floor to sleep on. Some people set up tents in the buildings so that they define their sleeping area, and there are vampire bats known to be in the area, so some people are finicky about being what they feed on, though we've never had that happen. We've seen them feeding on hogs real close to where we're staying. And we rent 3 houses that people live in, sleep in, and then we got the cookhouse. Now, we don't really recruit cavers to go on our expeditions. Cavers inquire. Cavers that feel like they're qualified and can do one of the deepest caves in the world, they contact me or Tommy Shiflett, and we fit in who we can. But one person we do most definitely recruit is our chef / diplomat, Vico Jones, who lives in Austin. And I cultivate that relationship, that friendship all year long. I went to Austin, which is 200 miles from Dallas, this last weekend, just to be sure I could see Vico and make sure everything's fine. Turned out Vico wasn't at the caver party I went to. He's up in Colorado helping somebody build a house. But nevertheless, I saw some of his friends, and they know how much we like to have him there. And what they say about Vico is he can make a can of sardines into a gourmet meal. He also sleeps in the kitchen. Why? So that he's there when cavers come in at all hours of the night and he's got the doors locked, and they bang on the door, and they wake him up, and he's up and at it and getting food ready for him. Doesn't mind that a bit. He likes doing it. We get our hardware ready. Doing deep caves takes a lot of rigging, and meanwhile, I go off and make sure we've got permission and everything's fine with local community leaders and elected officials. The young lady on the left is Alma Rodriguez. And Alma, hello, she's on this webinar. We were texting back and forth prior to starting, and she's in Huautla right now, online. Alma teaches school. Alma has her own English school. She's got a university degree in English. She's taught university level, and she's moved back to Huautla, and she's very deeply involved in our project. One of our leaders, really. We've got 3 leaders, Tommy Shiflett, me, and Alma Rodriguez. And here we are meeting with elected officials in the town of San Andres. And it was real important that things went well with them, because most of the caves we worked on this year were within their jurisdiction. And a friend of ours that refurbishes laptops sent a couple of laptops for the library at the school, and these guys are real happy about that. The IDs that we have hanging around our necks, Alma actually made for us, and they were signed by the Presidente of Huautla itself. And that's just so the people around the mountains who obviously know that we're foreigners, they know that we've got permission to be there. We also give some personal gifts. The guy to my left there is Jaime Escudero. Jaime lives in the village of San Agustin. He's a grandpa now, but I knew him when he was a teenager, when I started going there in the late 70s. The guy with the guitar is his grandson. And I took that guitar down there for him. I saw the guitar that they had, and I knew I could go to a pawn shop here in Dallas and get him a good one. And I presented it to Jaime, not even knowing that his grandson plays guitar. And Jaime played a couple of chords, and his grandson got it out of his hands. And then I heard for the next month that his grandson had it in his hands every time he was seen. So it was appreciated, and it's the least we can do for such a great friend. Meanwhile, cavers start going underground, and we have objectives. We go into the field with a list of objectives, and we just start getting people to go work on those objectives. Here's a group of cavers going into camp underground, and the entrance known as La Grieta. They're at the base of the cliffs. You can see to the right of the cavers. And the entrance of La Grieta is a 70-meter free fall, about 220 feet. And then it descends rope after rope after rope from there to about 500 meters deep, where it levels out somewhat. You may recognize this photograph, because this was on the cover of the December 2017 NSS News. Beautiful shot taken by ace photographer Josh Heidemann from Portland, Oregon. Swimming you got to do. Back in the day, in the 70s, we wore wetsuits all the time, but people don't so much anymore. We all bring wetsuits in case there's some passages being explored that require a lot of immersion in water. But for the most part, people wear cave suits and polypro or other synthetic material long underwear underneath them. We set up a camp. This is Camp 4. This is a remote camp. This was 700 meters deep in a section of the cave that nobody'd been to since the late 70s. I was one of the explorers of this area back then, and we have established camps down there now 2 years in a row, 2017 and 2018, and we will again in 2019. A couple of really tall domes have been found down there. One's estimated to be maybe 500 feet high, and we've got some ace dome climbers from TAG coming this next year, and they've got the experience. They know how to do it. They're going to climb those big domes. So here's a group that were camped underground. That woman with the blue jacket on is Katie Graham from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And Katie is one of the most active cavers in the Canadian Rockies. In fact, she alone set a new record for deepest cave in Canada. Might have been earlier this year, I think it was in February. What she did was a scuba dive, a cave dive at the bottom of the deepest cave and made it a little deeper. But there are some newspaper articles out about that. So they did some dome climbs using DeWalt drills. DeWalt is a sponsor of our expeditions. We get discounts on buying their gear, and we had good climbers that were climbing up from Camp 4 at the bottom, or very near the bottom of the La Grieta section of Sistem Huautla. We also had a group go back to this pit, which we did back in 1978 in a cave named Sótano de Agua de Carrizo. And Carrizo went 850 meters deep, I believe it was, or 860 meters deep, but didn't connect to the system. And as we explored more of the cave system near it, at the very bottom part of it, we realized that it comes close to connecting. But rather than rig all the way down 800 and some meters deep, there were some leads marked in the notes from the late 70s off the bottom of this 100 meter deep pit named Son of a Pitch. And sure enough, one of those leads led to the top of this impressive drop, which is 436 feet deep, in a cave known as Nita Natal. Now, Nita Natal is Mazateco, the language of the Sierra Mazateca, and it means a wind cave in Mazatec. And if you look closely at the bottom of the pit here, you can see somebody in red coveralls. That's actually a camp. There was a camp at the base of this 436-foot drop, which we named after a sponsor of our project, Benjamin Halsey from now Washington, D.C., and he's normally from St. Louis, is one of our donors, and he is a member of the Explorers Club, and we named the camp after him. And the reason there was a camp not that far into the cave was that there was a big crack near this camp that took a lot of air, a gale of wind. And the cavers enlarged it enough to get through and went on down another shaft series. And this is looking back up the tag shaft, it's named. It was named that because the original discoverers of it back in the mid 80s were from TAG, Jim Yeomans, Frank Bogle, Richard Schreiber. And this is a dramatic shot taken by Chris Higgins of the tag shaft. Back to Alma. Alma is just such a great help, and I think she and I communicate every day about something. She is our gal on the ground, and she's a great diplomat in Huautla, and has a family that's well known, and helps a lot that she speaks English as well as she does and writes English so well. So we communicate daily. And she and I we work on the public relations. There are a lot of people in these mountains. It's actually been called urban caving before, even though it's a rural area, and most people outside the cities grow all their own vegetables, big gardens, but nevertheless, there's people everywhere. So we've got to be understood why we're there doing this, and what we get out of it. And here Alma and I are giving a presentation to students in the big meeting room at the government building in Huautla. And she's an incredible translator, I think as good as somebody at the United Nations. Sometimes I get a little bit ahead of her, but she's got a certain hand signal she uses to slow me down. But we've spoken to well over 1,000 students over the last 3 years. We also have done some public presentations. You can see my name there, and this was on April the 14th of this year, where these invitations were put up all over the city of Huautla, and we rented a meeting area at the Posada San Antonio, which is a hotel in Huautla. And even though we didn't fill every chair, we tried, and we advertised a lot. But what was important was the right people came, the movers and the shakers, the well-educated people, the people that are the most curious. They came, and I met some people I'd never met before, and it was important, and it was good, and they all liked what they saw and are very interested in what we're discovering beneath their homeland. We've also taken teachers, groups of teachers, into very easy caves that you can just walk right into, and they ask a lot of questions. And of course, that carries over to their students. So we've worked with a lot of teachers in the area so that they understand what we're there to do. Alma found this taxi driver this year that not only was willing to spend a whole day with us and drive us back on rough roads, back into areas that we haven't gone to before, but he's also fluent Mazateco. So we could speak with him in Spanish, and then he would speak with people that didn't even speak Spanish, speaking Mazateco. And we went back out to the north end of the karst drainage basin where there are these incredible deep sinkholes called dolinas in Spanish. And it just really looks like something out of a Dr. Seuss book. Just houses almost on stilts on these karst pinnacles between these incredible sinkholes. But why do we do this? Well, to gain access to caves. It really does take part of being a manager, part of being a leader, is to provide enough caving for people that are using their vacation and spending their money to come here and go caving. You got to have caves available for them. This is not a wilderness. This is where a lot of people live. And the road up into this area wasn't even in existence until the 60s. So these people have been isolated. They're becoming more and more accustomed to the outside world, but we're the outside world coming to them. So it was really handy to have that taxi driver spend a whole day with us, and his rate was very, very reasonable. Meanwhile, back in Plan Carlota, people came out of the cave, people that had been camping in the cave for a week. Well, we go in the month of April because that's the driest month of the year. In the tropics of southern Mexico, they have pretty much half a year of rainy season, which is June till December, and half a year of dry season, which is January till late May. We go in April, should be the driest month of the year, but sometimes it rains. So when we got there this year, around the 1st of April, we realized that it was wet. There was standing water, and all the springs were running. And we realized the ground was saturated. All it took was the rain while people were in the cave, and they might get flooded in. Well, these people were flooded in. They were flooded in for a week. Now, unlike those kids in Thailand, these are very experienced cavers. They were camped in a place that was high and dry. They had sleeping bags, they had batteries, they had food, and most importantly, maybe to the leader of the expedition, they had objectives that they could get to. So they continued to explore and map while they were trapped. But they weren't trapped, and they couldn't get out until the water went down enough that they could get through the low place and had to negotiate some low air spaces to come on out of the cave. Josh Heidemann, who I mentioned before, who lives in Oregon, he was on assignment. He'd come on expeditions before, but this year he was on assignment for National Geographic, and he took photographs, and an article was written that was online. You can find that just by Googling National Geographic Huautla, and you'll find it. Written real well, and as you can see, they played up that cavers were trapped in the cave. You know, the drama of it all, but actually all went well. Back in the cookhouse, we have a real operation underway. The first 4 expeditions of PESH, we looked for volunteers among the cavers to cut vegetables and wash pots and pans. And, well, you know, you just have to stay on top of them, and they want to talk about caving and talk about what they found, and they're not real gung-ho about doing those chores. So this year we tried something new, and we hired a local lady that lived across the road, and it was mutually beneficial. Yolanda was happy as could be. We paid her a reasonable rate. She was happy with it, and she cut vegetables, washed pots and pans and dishes, and swept the floor, and was most pleased. Worked out great. Planning to do it again next year. Cavers are working toward their next underground camp. Here we have a Jacqueline Hawk on the left, and Jake McLeod, who now live in Denver, and I believe that's Adrian Miguel Nieto, whose face you can't quite see because of Jake's hat. He's from Mexico City. Is a professor there and quite a good caver. They're mixing underground camping food. We use a high protein, very nutritious recipe that they actually came up with over at Sistem Huautla, which is the second deepest cave in the Western Hemisphere and only about 30 kilometers south of us, but there's a deep canyon as deep as the Grand Canyon in between. So you got to drive way around. It's a full day of driving. But they're mixing up a dinner mix here, and it's all dehydrated, and jerky is taken in, dried fruit and so forth, and everybody's real happy with the 3 different recipes of mixes that we use. For a charging station, we use that UPS, an uninterrupted power supply there that you see. Best purchase I've ever made. Got it off eBay. It's lasted through 4 of the 5 expeditions, and just the other day I replaced the batteries that are in it because it's a backup system if the electricity goes out. But all those batteries you see are, and that's for headlamps, for camera batteries, for laptop batteries, for drill batteries. They're all charged off of one outlet. You can see the wire going off to the left. And I just love that UPS, that power supply, uninterrupted power supply unit. Just a great thing to have, totally necessary. This is a historic bunch. This is the group. Adrian, again, on the left, keeping book. Ellie Watson, second from the left. Rich Zaria from Austin. Jesse Hauser from Indiana. I think Chattanooga now, and he's working in Oklahoma on the wind generators. And Lee White on the right. They actually were the team that made the connection between Sótano de Agua de Cristo and Sistem Huautla, which was the big success of the expedition this year. They added 9 kilometers of cave and 5 entrances to the system by that connection. First, Carrizo is connected to Nita Natal by the tag shaft and that crack that was enlarged. And then they went down a shaft series and got about 600 meters deep and came out into a passage that we'd explored back in the 70s and mapped it. There's Adrian's sketch laid out on a table back at the cookhouse. Of course, it's a well-drawn, oriented sketch. You can actually lay it out and it all lines up. And you can have a quick look at what was found and what was mapped. Dinner is always a great fellowship, real good food, of course, cooked by Vico Jones. And we got cavers in this picture from, of course, Mexico. Adrian back there, Denver on the right, as I mentioned before. Jim Smith there in the yellow shirt from Atlanta. And Ron Rutherford in the far distance on the left into the table. And he's the owner of Cave Skins, makers of fine caving clothes, pants and shirts and so on. Sometimes we're entertained by things like this. I'm not going to say whose leg that is or even her gender, but that's some bruising there. And we asked, what happened? She said, I came into contact with the walls. Also, there's the heat treatment. Our landlord, Epifanio, is also somewhat of a folk medicine practitioner. And Lee White here had sprained his ankle, and we said, oh, it's time for the heat treatment. So we went and got our landlord, Epifanio. He wandered off into the darkness and found the plant that you see on the table, and he lit some aguardiente, which is distilled sugarcane water. It's homemade rum, and put that in that bowl and lit it with a match, and got those that plant flaming and put it on Lee's ankle. So I don't know if it's a placebo effect or what, but people get healed real fast with this remedy. We have procedures about entering our notes soon after the people come out of the cave. What you see here is a computer screen. We use Walls, which is a freeware off of one place that you can get it is the Texas Speleological Survey website. You can download it there, but it's updated all the time and pretty sophisticated. You see a vertical line that goes up to nowhere, lower near middle part of the profile here. This is a profile looking from the side. That's a shot with a Disto X up a dome. So that dome's really high. You know, that's probably that 500-foot dome that's going to be climbed next year. But you can see names of caves. Now think, what you see here is a cave that's more than twice as deep as the deepest cave in the United States, and that's how complex Sistema Huautla is. That's why this cave has been explored for 50 years. It's like you take a big piece of tag and put it in a small area. Lots and lots of vertical caves. you see 5,000 feet of relief right here. So eventually our 4 weeks of expedition comes to a close, and we spend a couple of days washing gallon Nalgene bottles. And my daughter is on the left there. That's Audrey. Audrey lives in Austin, Texas, and she has been going to Huautla since she was a toddler. So it's like a second home to her. And she came at the end of the expedition to put that college education I paid for to use and did a good inventory for us. So we packed all this stuff up to store down there. We got a great safe place to store things, and Audrey led a team that inventoried everything, and we know what we've got there. And we cleaned our ropes and measured our ropes, and all ropes that were dirty and needed to be washed in a front loader washing machine were brought back to Texas by me, but that wasn't much of them, many of them. We washed most of them there. You can see PMI boxes on the left on the floor there. Those are spools of rope that haven't been used yet. We took our last group photo. We take a group photo at the middle of the expedition when there's a turnover. Not everybody can get away for a month. People that get 2 weeks of vacation will come down for 2 weeks, and then we have a turnover weekend where people leave and people arrive. So this was the end of the first 2 weeks. Some of these people were there for the whole month. You can see several people from Mexico there, Cuate Sanchez, second one from the left, Jerry Moril next to him with a hat on. And I've told you about Adrian Miguel Nieto in the back there, and others from various parts of Mexico and even Costa Rica on this year's expedition. We have good friends that have a restaurant in Huautla at it's called Rositas, Restaurante Rositas, and we've been going there for years. We keep a log book in that restaurant, and she allowed us to have a private party there the last night of the expedition, and everybody was in great spirits. We had no accidents. We had accomplished a lot, added 5 entrances to the system and 9 kilometers of cave, and met many of our objectives. The closing dinner was of indigenous foods. That's what we requested. We wanted to eat Mazatec foods. So that's a big banana leaf in the foreground with a type of tamale that they make in the mountains, and Rosita's hot sauce, which I love, and black beans in that bowl at the top. And Alma surprised us with a 5th anniversary cake, which was a very pleasant surprise. Thank you, Alma. That was wonderful. And somebody came forward with a candle, the likes of which I'd never seen. It was like a small Roman candle. And I'm looking for those here in the States. That's quite the way to celebrate. We had a great time that closing night. So back to management. Here's the way it goes throughout the year. You see it says year-round, that first bullet point. I heard from a caver today who said, how do I get on an expedition? And I tell them all the same thing. And after I give a presentation at the NSS convention, we're an official project of the NSS, and I give a talk at every convention, I'll hear from 10 or 15 people right after my talk. I want to go. And I tell them all the same thing. Send me an email in early August. Early August is key. And it's interesting that I'll get several emails on August the 1st. And then I'll not hear from a whole bunch of people that said they were going to write. So that works. It's kind of a screening process, but also we don't start thinking about the next expedition, the next April, until August. So in August and September, we vet the cavers on the list and we schedule participation. We can only accommodate 25 cavers at a time, both because of who we can feed on the surface and who we got housing for on the surface. We can't set up tents there in Plan Carlota. People have tried setting them up on flat concrete roofs, but the wind blows very strongly down through that valley and it'll tear your tent up, or at least will keep you up all night. So we can get the surface chef and support crew recruited, the vehicles that are going, the expedition objectives determined. We've got all those written for 2019 already. And then October 31st is when first money's due. Now, first money is called a gear commitment fee. We can start buying gear after October 31st. More rope, more hardware for rigging, more cooking gear, more underground camping gear, whatever that might be. It's not refundable. It's a commitment fee. You've paid $100 and said you're coming. If you don't come, thanks a lot. It's tax deductible. Then November, December, January, we're right in that right now. We seek support. I sent a couple of grant applications today, and it's a constant labor of love to make contact with possible donors. Hardest thing in the world to come up with is cash, of course. Donated money. I told you before, we named a camp underground after a generous donor. That's the least we could do. But discounts on gear are the easiest thing to come by. And then January 31st, the daily fee is due. The daily fee is $15 a day that people will be on the expedition. If they're on the expedition for a full month, 30 days, 30 times 15 is $450 plus a $100 gear fee, $550. And you're going to have a month where it covers your food, your rent, propane, local transport, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the things that we have to spend money on while the expedition is happening. And that's refundable until the end of February. So you got a month to think about it. You got a lot of money invested. You got a month to think about it. If you're not coming, you better say before the end of February, because after that, your money has been converted to mashed potatoes or spaghetti or you name it, things that we bought for the expedition. And we start buying those things in February and March. Class of March, packing, send-off party, vehicles drive to Huautla, 4 weeks of caving, and then after that, reports and articles. We've had articles several years in a row in the NSS News, I think starting in 2014. So up to this year, 5 years in a row, had 3 or 4 cover photographs. So sponsor fulfillment means living up to your obligations. You said if somebody will donate something, you will supply them with photographs and testimonials about their product in an extreme environment. Well, you got to follow up and do that. Somebody's got to do that. Somebody's got to keep track of that, because if you don't go back to them again. And then a presentation at the NSS convention. Now, Tommy Shiflett from Virginia and I are co-leaders, and you can see this list of what we're responsible for. Some things are on both lists, like potential team member contact. I'm in Texas. I know cavers here, and I know cavers in Tag, where I've done a lot of caving. I know cavers that have caved in Mexico a lot. Tommy knows cavers back east more than me, West Virginia. So we're points of contact, expeditions, team selection. We work on together. But then you can see that the list changes after that. I handle the business end of things, the accounting, paying bills, grant writing, government permissions, so forth, food purchases. And Tommy's more the technical guy. He's an engineer. He does our data management, survey data management. We got thousands of survey stations. And he's now looking at all kinds of sophisticated stuff like LIDAR underground, maybe even hologram, 3-dimensional maps that can be projected. We'd love to come to the NSS convention with something like that. So there's how we divide our tasks, but we've got a really good working relationship, and co-leaders works out really well. I can bounce stuff off him, he can bounce stuff off me, and we are in contact pretty much every day. Our sponsors include PMI. Really in the modern era of Huautla caving, which started in 1976 and goes to today, one of the founders of PMI was really the inspiration to go back to Huautla in 76, and that was the late Richard Schreiber, who actually named TAG. He coined that acronym for TAG caving, and he was one of the owners and founders of PMI until he sadly died in 1991. The PMI gives us a really good discount on rope, and we're really glad to tell everybody that we think is the best caving rope out there. And I did a webinar for them in May that you can find, and a lot of the pictures I've shown here I talked about, but I talked a lot about their rope and our experience with PMI rope. Whole Earth Provision Company out of Austin. They're headquartered there, but they got stores in various cities in Texas. They've helped us in several ways. They've been kind to cavers in Austin for decades. One thing they did was their marketing department worked with me to create this brochure. This brochure is a 4-pager, and it's got a lot of really nice color photographs, and it explains what we're doing. In English, it's mostly for potential donors or family or friends or whoever want to know what we're doing down there and spending a month a year in Mexico. But it also appears in 3 languages. Same text in 3 languages: English, Spanish, and Mazateco. Alma knows a school teacher, Javier, who translated it from Spanish into Mazateco. And what's really interesting to me about this is, turns out there's only 2 publications in the world that are in those 3 languages, where the same text is in those 3 languages, the very languages that they teach in the schools in Huautla. So school teachers love this. What's the other publication? The Holy Bible, which schools being secular, they don't use. So they really like our brochures. And you can see that best of show there. I entered the brochure in 3 languages in the graphic arts salon at the NSS convention this year and won best of show. Very happy about that. Soon we're going to get a plaque from the NSS, and I'm going to give that to a Whole Earth Provision Company as a thank you for all they do for us. Oberto Jerky is, I think, the highest quality jerky out there, and they've been generous with the donation of various flavors of jerky. Cave Skins, I mentioned before, that's Ron Rutherford's company out of Spring Branch, Texas, near Austin. And he makes fine cave packs, duffel bags. I've used his cave pants exclusively for probably a decade now, built-in knee pads and everything. Climbtex out of Austin, they make carabiners, they make hangers, all kinds of hardware for rigging. Austin Nuts, new sponsor this year, but they donated a bunch of almonds and pecans and hazelnuts and so forth, and are probably going to use some of our pictures in their ads. Collins Street Bakery is a network of a chain of bakeries in Texas. They donated a bunch of fruit cakes, which are highly nutritional, and people took them into underground camps, and they were fantastic. They've also donated coffee, several expeditions in a row, and that's very welcome, because we've got a 42-cup coffee urn on the surface, and some percolators to use in underground camps for making coffee. On Rope One, of course, former president of the NSS and his wife, William Shrewsbury in Carolina, own On Rope One, and they're generous sponsors, give good discounts, and have donated some things to our expeditions. And Elevated Climbing. Elevated Climbing's out of Chattanooga, and their specialty is stuff that other people don't carry. Harnesses from Spain, and DeWalt drills and bolts and all kinds of things. And they've donated T-shirts. They're going to donate expedition T-shirts for this next expedition 2019. There's a picture of Lee White. That's a DeWalt promo shot. And I posted this picture of Lee White. Chris Higgins took it. I posted this picture on Facebook from Huautla, and within seconds, the first comment that some woman back in the States made was, "Fuzzy like a peach." And I think that describes Lee White real well. Explorers Club, we carry the flag of the Explorers Club on expeditions. That's an award, actually. And I'm a member. Jim Smith's a member. Bill Stone's a member. And we publish with the Explorers Club. This field report was published after we got back. It was in the summer issue of the Explorers Log. So here's a topographic map of Huautla. In yellow, that's the city of Huautla, about 40,000 people, and Sistem Huautla is just to the east of it in red there. At the very bottom of the map, you can see more red. That's where the resurgence is. That's where the water comes back out in that deep canyon. So there's a lot of areas where, of course, there's caves beneath the surface. It's just a matter of finding an entrance that gets to them. And up in the northern part of the map, at the top of the screen, there's big sinkholes up there where we went with that taxi driver, and we still haven't gotten permission to go in many entrances that are sure to be there. So that brings us to more public relations. We put up a display in the government building in Huautla. This is Ernie Garza. A lot of you know him, with this display that we were welcome to mound on the wall there in the government building. Huautla is a real spiritual place. It's also the home of the magic mushroom. Goes back probably thousands of years there. And in fact, when the first cavers arrived there, they couldn't believe that there were American hippies there that were kind of overdoing it with those mushrooms. But we met with a curandero because it was suggested to us that we might get right with the cave spirits, and the people would think better of us about going to the caves. So we got that live turkey, and we got this curandero, kind of a medicine man, to do a ceremony. Each of us lit a beeswax candle, and that's copal incense smoldering there. That's John Lillestolen from Blacksburg, Virginia, having that turkey passed over him. What I didn't see coming was after that ceremony, the curandero said, we got to go to a entrance to the cave. We went to the closest one, that 200-foot, 70-meter drop in the La Grieta, and he had me sacrifice that turkey, which I didn't like doing, but you do what you got to do to get right with the cave spirits. Also, Amalia Montoya, who's an anthropologist in Mexico City, she made contact with one of the top speleologists in Mexico, Carlos Lascano, and Carlos wrote a really good article, very positive article about 50 years of caving in Huautla, and that was published in a magazine named Mexico Desconocido, Unknown Mexico, and that's distributed all over the country. That's a photo of mud cracks by Elliot Stahl taken in Anthodide Hall, 700 meters deep in Sistema Huautla. The city of Huautla's got an exceptionally talented painter, a young man from Huautla who's been painting murals around the city. This is a Genesis, and there's a couple of scenes there on each side of a blank canvas. Not really canvas, it's a stucco wall on the side of a supermarket, but that is going to be a cave painting to commemorate the project that we've had going there for years. Mushrooms, again, even appear on taxi cabs there. And some people still go to Huautla, but you're not to go there for recreational use of the magic mushroom, but more for spiritual reasons, to clean your head, get happier, cure some sort of worry that you might have. But Maria Sabinas was a famous curandera back in the 60s. There's songs written about her. They say that the Beatles wrote songs about her, Donovan, and so forth. And there's paintings of the mushrooms on the walls in the city. There's a painting of Maria on the left. I've heard it said that she's actually the Fool on the Hill, the Beatles song. It's about her. Don't know for sure, but I believe it. This is a recent painting by a talented painter that shows cavers within Grutas de San Agustin, the main entrance of the system, or maybe they're not. Maybe they're spirits because they don't have caving gear on. And then there's this painting that appeared in an art gallery a couple of months ago, which actually looks like me. And I've gotten one interpretation by a local person, and I don't know if that's really the interpretation of this painting or not, but if that's me, I'm in there 5 times, and one of me is tied up. And I was told the reason that I was tied up in this painting is that I don't stay there and make that my home, that I only come back for 1 month out of the year. So I got to thank the photographers, Kasia Bernakas from Poland, Dave Bonnell is the editor of the NSS News, Elizabeth Gama lives in the Huautla area, Chris Higgins in Knoxville, Josh in Portland, Oregon, Tiffany in Orange County, California, Cuate Sanchez in San Luis Potosi, Mexico, Tommy Shiflett, Virginia, that's me, and Ellie Watson from Austin, Texas. And we have a website, a bunch of pictures on there, and even a donate button if you would like to make a contribution to be part of this project. Thank you for attending.
All right, Bill.
Ready for questions.
Awesome. Now for the questions. Let me get the first one. Somebody emailed it to me. Pull my email up. Let's see. From Monica. It says, how does Bill...
Hello, Monica. Monica from Saltillo, Mexico. Monica's a big name in Mexican speleology. She represents the International Union of Speleologists, the UIS. I went to the ICS in Sydney, Australia last summer, gave a talk about Huautla. Monica's a big name in speleology in Mexico. Hello, Monica.
her question, it says, how do you obtain sponsors to support the expedition all this time? And which is the most difficult that the team has in front in that time for the expedition? So it's probably what is the most difficult thing for your team during the time of the expedition?
Well,
So
before an expedition, the most difficult thing is making the hard decisions on who we can fit in, because Huautla is well enough known, and there's been enough in the literature that a couple of books written. I wrote one, Bill Stone wrote one. There's been over 100 articles in the AMCS newsletter, lots of NSS news articles, and so forth. It's well known. So people that are feel they're qualified want to join us, and people that have been there before want to come back. So if we're only limited to let's say 40 people, with some only coming for 2 weeks and others coming for 2 weeks, we can fit in about 39 or 40 people, but only 25 at a time. It's really hard to tell somebody that maybe real well that sorry, write again next year. And that's pretty much my job. I'm the people guy. Tommy's more of the data guy and the technical guy, but he deals with it with me. That's the hardest part to me. The rest of it's just a lot of sweat and tears and elbow grease. And how do you raise support? Well, that's not easy. You write a lot of letters, you fill out a lot of grant applications, and you get to know people. One reason that I joined the Explorers Club when I was 30 years old, and that wasn't cheap. It's expensive to be a member. But Bill Stone and I realized that we had a major cave system here, and we wanted to get serious about expeditions. We figured we could do them many times to this area. It just seemed like it was going to be a vast cave system, which it is. So at the 1978 NSS convention, we took a walk with Russ Gurney, and Russ Gurney had been the president of the NSS, and he'd been the president of the Explorers Club also. And we went out to lunch with him, and we said, what do you recommend we do to begin to raise support toward expeditions that we hope will go on into the future? Well, here it is 40 years later. So they have. And the first thing he said was, join the Explorers Club. He said, I'll sponsor you, because that gives you credibility that you build on. And I will tell you that the main sponsors that we have are people that I have met through that organization, that I met them personally. I remember their names. I followed up and said, hey, we met. Do you remember that? Let me send you some pictures. Let me send you some articles. And you cultivate a relationship. And then after you get back, you write them again. So there's a lot of work to it. That's why they call fundraising for a nonprofit development, because you're developing relationships. And as far as gear sponsors for discounts, I think it helps a lot to have a good cave. I mean, come on, we got a great cave here, so we can say, be part of this, join us. I tried something one time, it didn't work. I said, if you donate $50, and I put this out to the whole NSS, if you donate $50, we'll send you a really cool poster, and we will carry your name to the very depths. Well, that didn't fly. It does with mountaineering. People will donate money to have their name carried to the top of Mount Everest, but it doesn't work with deep caves. It's different. You experiment. You try what works. I only did that once. I won't do that again. Didn't work. Out of the whole NSS membership, we had 3 people take us up on it.
Okay, what about the most difficult trip for your team?
Most difficult trip? I guess when you're hauling loads. I gave a presentation. Where was that? At the Kentucky Speleo Fest. They had me up there as speaker in late May around Memorial Day, and some guy came up to me afterwards and said, gee, I want to go on an expedition. I'm a vertical caver. And I said, great. Multi-drop caves? Well, 1 or 2 pits. I said, how about 30 or 40 in a row with a 30-pound pack? And he said, I don't know about carrying a pack. And I said, well, that's really what it comes down to if you want to know it. That really is what it is,
Mm-hmm.
But we only got one cook in the service, and we got one jack of all trades that keeps the infrastructure operating, but the rest of everybody is hauling loads in a deep cave, to want to know the truth. And I could tell you stories, and it's even in my book about Huautla, about, people getting overextended. I had a guy sitting next to me one time watching somebody climb a rope, and we had 10 hours of rope climbing ahead of us, 40 drops, some of them 200 feet deep. Why be in a hurry? You can't get out of here fast. It's going to take 10 hours. And this guy next to me said, I don't even think I can make it out of here. And I said, what's that mean? What are you saying? He said, well, I just can't imagine how I can get back out of here. I said, one rope at a time. You see that one? That's the one I'm concerned with. That one right there. He said, what are you, fooling yourself? No, I'm just dealing with a task at hand. And then guess what? There's another rope after that. And you just keep plugging away to get out. I came here because I love this. I didn't come here because I'm afraid of it.
Okay, great. Another one is, Monica wants to know, on the nutrition that you were talking about, the recipe you have, do you have one for people with allergies? With food allergies?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we got a woman coming this next expedition who's let it be known that she's allergic to gluten, corn, and milk. So
that's a tough one.
Yeah, so she said, I said, okay, well, how about rice noodles? And she said, that's good. So I've already got them. They're right here in the room I'm sitting in right now. I already got them. The noodles for her. We don't have noodles for anybody else yet, except what spaghetti we might have left down there this year. But milk. I said, how about almond milk? And she said, no, I can't drink that too. So I don't know about milk, what we're going to do about that. Probably not deal with it. And then the other was gluten. No, the other was corn. And that's okay, because mostly corn is on the surface. You don't have much corn in underground camps. But it's Mexico, so there's a lot of corn on the surface. You got tortillas, so we can avoid that. But she's so allergic to corn, she said she can't even use pots and pans that corn's been cooked in. So I think we can deal with it okay. We do our best. We've had vegans, we've had vegetarians. We've got a chef that aims to please. He will do anything he can to help. And the underground food, the only ingredient there that had gluten was ramen, and that was just for some carbo additive.
Right, next question is, what is the name of the book that you wrote that you keep talking about?
Yeah, my book is named Huautla, 30 Years in One of the World's Deepest Caves. And the 30 years that it covers, it's pretty much my story, the trips I was on. Somebody even said to me once, hey, that's an autobiography. And I said, no, it's not. And they said, think about it. Those are your stories, the trips you were on. So, well, those are that's what I know the most about, where I was there. So yeah, the 30 years is 1977 from my first trip up until 2007 when we connected Rio Glacier to the system. So that's 11 years ago now. So I'll write another one at the end of the project, the whole story, and then we'll do another a book on photographs too. We plan to do a large format coffee table type photographs of maybe the best 100 pictures or something like that. And then Bill Stone, Barbara M. Indy, and Monty Paulson wrote a book together titled Beyond the Deep, and it's mostly about the 1994 expedition, the big dive in the sump at the bottom. My book covers that expedition too, but theirs, of course, is in much greater detail because the whole book's about that expedition.
Now, where can they obtain this book?
Oh, Amazon, AMCS, Association for Mexican Cave Studies. I search eBay every once in a while for Huautla just to see what pops up. I found some surprising things there at times, and my book is always there on eBay.
Okay. Another one is, have you had injuries on the trip?
Yeah, we've had some injuries. We've had some. Our safety record is really, really good. And let me say something about that first before I tell you about the couple of injuries. But I mean, think about it, thousands and thousands of people hours underground and a very short list of injuries. That's because we stress safety so much. And when Stone and I were talking about starting this project in the late 70s, I remember sitting in his living room in Austin, Texas, with 2 or 3 other people that were involved at the time, and the subject of having a safety officer came up, and I remember saying, you know, I don't want the one person to be a safety officer. I want everybody to be a safety officer. The last thing we ever want to hear anybody say is, I saw that coming. Don't see it coming. Say something. Be a critic. And that also means that don't be sensitive. If somebody says, hey, bud, I don't like your rig, and here's why. I just don't feel comfortable with it. Don't bristle and have an argument. Say, show me. Let's fix it. So we got a great safety record because we call each other on things and we discuss things. We had a big discussion this year. Somebody got upset because there was an issue with the way bolts were being placed. And I didn't even catch on to it right away because I was busy going off each day and make sure caves were open and doing PR and so on. So I came back to the cookhouse and there was tension in the air. And I said, what's going on? What's happening? And somebody said, well, I may leave. I'm not happy with. So we sat down and we had a discussion. It needed to be moderated is what it was. And it came out what the problem was. And it was easily fixed. It's just that people get upset with other people. And, you know, there's a lot of stress in an expedition. And it takes some, you know, some people skills really to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, injuries. Yeah, you know, let's see.
Mm-hmm.
I got hurt real bad one time in the deepest underground camp ever done in a cave anywhere in the world at the time. And that was in the late 80s, 600 meters deep. That's way deeper than any cave in the United States. In an underground camp, I had a camp stove malfunction, set a liter of fuel off, blew up in my lap, essentially set my clothes on fire.
Woo.
Gave me 2nd and 3rd degree burns on my right hand. And I climbed out of the cave pretty much with one hand. Took 13 hours to climb out. And we had an EMT in the cave and an EMT on the surface. And by the time I got to the surface 13 hours later, my hand looked like an Incredible Hulk. You know, I mean, it was just blistered. Like you didn't even look at it. It was so bad. And the EMT on the surface said, you're going home. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm leader of this expedition. I'll be okay. He said, no, you won't be okay. You can die from that. Go home. And he was right. You know, I went to Mexico City and flew home and handed it over to somebody else. We had a fatality in 1994. An Englishman, Ian Rowland, sadly, was cave diving solo. And those of you that know some of the best cave divers know that they prefer to do their exploratory work alone. One of them told me one time that made the point. He said, when I'm alone, I can trust everybody on the trip. And that's the way they do it. They rig the line and others go through. Well, he was alone, he drowned. Still don't know exactly what happened. It could have been a problem with his recently diagnosed diabetes, and it could have been a problem with the equipment and operator error because he was using a rebreather. Don't know for sure. But what's very interesting about that fatality is that his son, not only, who was only 2 years old when his dad died in 1994, he's now a big cave diver in England, was on the rescue in Thailand, and has come back to Huautla. And when he came back to Huautla, he's got a different last name because his mom remarried. And I met him and I didn't know who he was. And finally, after he left, somebody said, you know who that was? I said, who, that nice young man? Yeah, that's Ian Rowland's son. I was like, whoa, really? Wow. He came back to see where his dad had lived his last days. We had no incidents this year at all, except maybe that sprained ankle that Lee White had. You know, very, very few. But there's a list. In 30-some expeditions, we've had some things. But we're prepared. We've got a backboard, a sked litter, a good trauma kit. We get as many EMTs on expeditions as we can. That's a qualifier. You've done deep caves and you're an EMT, boy, you got a leg up on that, on getting to go on an expedition. So we're prepared, but nevertheless, we try to avoid them at all costs.
Well, that kind of answers the second question, just what kind of medical support do you have?
Yeah, there's a clinic in Huautla. I was in a truck once in 1980 that went off the road, was spun in midair. 4 cavers in the back. It was a local truck going a little fast, went off the road at a curve, off a cliff. we were thrown out. I had a bunch of broken ribs, ripped, blown. Other people were hurt too, banged up. We went in the clinic in Huautla. They got good doctors there, nursed us back to health, and I did a 600-meter deep trip 3 weeks later.
Okay, another one is how far from town is the cave?
Well, La Grieta, from where we rent the houses now, is 9/10 of a mile. So it can be walked in 20 minutes. Now the 25 entrances are spread out over the whole karst drainage system, so our basin, I mean. So, you know, if you were going to walk from the farthest south entrance to the farthest north entrance, it would take you an hour, maybe a little bit more. And that's with roads being there. So distance-wise, it's probably about 6 miles from the southernmost entrance to the northernmost entrance on the surface. Underground, it'd be farther because, you know, difference between the road and a cave passage.
Okay, and Sonia Mayer said,
Sonia?
what are your tips? Yes.
Well, she was on the expedition this year. She's an up-and-coming caver that's really got a lot of skills. It was great to have her. Yeah. What's she asking?
She says, what are your tips for grant writing? Oh, it's a multi-question. What are your tips for grant writing? How do you find grants? And are there certain organizations you know that are friendly to cave expeditions? So it's a 3-pronged question.
Yeah, well, two obvious ones are the NSS International Fund, and the International Fund of the NSS, for the most part, was funded by the estate of Ron Simmons, who actually went on a Huautla expedition as his first international expedition. Something I pointed out to him the first time I wrote a grant request to the NSS International Committee was, Ron Simmons came to Huautla first as his first international expedition, and then in his will he left his estate to the NSS for those kind of grants. So that's the first place to go. The second place to go is the National Speleological Foundation, and the National Speleological Foundation is really a committee of people that know about investing, and they invest life member monies. So if you buy a life membership with the NSS, your money does not go into the operating fund and gets spent that year to make budget. It's invested, and then your annual dues are paid out of that. So they invest that money and make some money, and they give grants out every year. So I've applied to them this year. One thing they like, and they say that if you look at the wording of writing a grant proposal, is they like to meet you. So that's something that I always do at an NSS convention, is I pay attention to when their open meeting is, and I go and I wait patiently until they ask me if I have anything to say, and then I stand up and tell them about that year's expedition and what we have planned for the next year, and I tell them that I'm going to be applying for a grant, and that's what they want, and that's what I do, and we usually get a grant from them. I think we always have gotten a grant from them when we ask for it. Beyond that, going outside of the caving community, grottos give grants. I could name several, but I'm just going to keep that to myself. You can do your own research. Sonia, I believe, I think she got a grant for us. Yeah, from a grotto back east where she was near Washington. Usually what a grotto wants you to say is that, if you'll give $100, or I think the most we ever got from a grotto was $1,200, and that was specifically for rope. That happens to be a grotto that's got some good fundraisers. So I was caving with a guy in that grotto, and he happened to mention that they had like $7,500 in the bank. And I said, well, what are you going to do with that money? It's a lot of money. And he said, well, I don't know. Somebody will probably eventually ask for some of it. Well, it didn't take me long to realize that was going to be me for sure. And I did. And then I said in my initial approach to him that I would just love to drive the 300 miles to where you guys meet and give you a presentation about what your money's spent on ropes. So, fundraising takes cultivation. It takes making contacts, um, and maintaining them and following through. But like I said before, I've been very pleased about being a member of the Explorers Club, and I don't mean to be promoting it here, but I wanted to join it as a kid because we had a copy of the book Kon-Tiki around the house when I grew up, and it talked about how Thor Heyerdahl couldn't have done that famous experiment of sailing across the South Pacific on a raft had he not dropped by the Explorers Club in New York City and met some people, and they decided to fund him. So I've been a member of that since '79, and just about all the sizable donations that we've received have come from wealthy people that are members of that, who are members of that because they're fans of exploration and they want to mingle and meet real explorers and maybe help them. But you gotta be creative with how you put it, and you gotta have a good cave. If you're going off to some place that's got no caves but it's got potential, well, sell them on the potential. Sell them on what you might find, and then if it's there, then carry on with it.
And one thing I want to bring up is sponsors. If any of you listeners know of good sponsors or people that would like to sponsor, have them get hold of Bill. I did that a couple of years ago for you guys. Hope it turned out well. But if anybody knows companies or organizations that would have equipment or other things that could help the expedition, don't be afraid to contact them and give Bill their information.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, any other?
And we help develop gear, and we will we write testimonials on gear. Somebody sends us whatever it might be, a drill, for instance, from DeWalt. We'll put it through 10 years of life experience in a month. We'll beat it up, we'll trash it, and then we'll send it to them and say, here's what happens. And they say, God, what'd you do? Drag it behind the truck? No, we just went caving with it. In fact, I was writing a grant proposal today, and I almost mailed it. But then I decided, I even got to the post office with it, and I decided, well, it said I had to November 30th, and I just thought of a couple of things that I ought to add, a couple of articles that we've published. I'm going to put it in there. I'm going to beef up this package. And that was to the Ohio Grotto. And somebody posted on one of the Facebook pages that I pay attention to that they have funds that they award for scientific work in caves, and we're doing a bunch of science, biology, paleontology, and so forth, geology. We're doing this next expedition, even paleoclimate research.
Sounds awesome. All right, people, more questions. Our questions have kind of come to a standstill. Anybody else have any more questions? We will I will ask them of Bill if you have anything else. But we've kept you on here for quite a while. If you
sorry to go
questions,
so long. I could go longer.
If you have any questions at the end of this, go ahead and email me, and you can email Bill. If you're listening to this after you've downloaded it, after the presentation is over, go ahead and still email us, and I'll shift the questions off to Bill. Anything else you want to say, Bill? Any last words before we take off?
Well, yeah. We've been fortunate in Huautla in that we've got a really great cave, and it's been a major part of my life. In fact, in my book, Huautla, 30 years in one of the world's deepest cave, I remember saying in there that this one moment of exploration, we just made a major discovery that sort of opened up passages that we still explore now. It was just a key discovery, was as important to me as the birth of my two children. And they both brought that up to me and said, is that really right, Dad? I said, yeah, actually it was. They know. But caving's a wonderful thing. It's actual exploration, and You guys are fortunate to be into it. I encourage you to stick with it. And there's places people haven't gone to yet with tremendous potential. But remember, there's a reason they haven't gone there yet. You know, it might be hard to get to or whatever. But thanks for tuning into this, and come up and talk to me at an NSS convention. I'll tell you some more.
Monica says something about she can't hear right now.
Monica can't hear?
Yeah, let me find out what's going on.
Okay.
All right. Well, I try and figure that out.
Tell her to write me. She's got my email address.
And then you can also let her know that she can, hopefully by the end of the week, normally Alex, our awesome, incredible webmaster, will usually have this up on the website within 72 hours.
Alex is incredible.
What the guy does with the website is amazing. He totally is amazing. And he told me to stop thanking him, but I want to thank Alex because he does amazing work.
Thank you, Alex.
Yes, there you go. Thank you, Alex. So now you can be mad at me. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much for showing up. Bill, I know you're busy, and I really appreciate this. I hope that you will come back for another webinar, because we always have a huge amount of downloads on the webinars that you do for us, and we thank you for all of your time. And
my pleasure.
Everybody, you have a good night, and cave safely. Remember, everything is on the website of caves.org. Look on the front page. On the left side, you'll see the most current webinar. Click the link just below. It takes you to a library. We have pages and pages and pages of webinars. They're all for educational and enrichment, cavers helping cavers. So everybody have a good night and cave safely.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Debbie.